Welcome to a new video on AlHuTV. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to something new. First up, the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro. This gimbal here, the beautiful white one we have, I really like it. On the other side we have the Osmo Mobile 8 from DJI. You can see it here as well. We also want to take a closer look at that one. I have a bit more accessories here. This video is more focused on Insta. Why? Well, this isn't a direct comparison. But we do want to clearly point out a few differences here. Especially between the DJI Mobile 8, we want to highlight what Insta or Insta360 has done differently here. That's why we're also taking a look at the other ones, so we can have a bit of a comparison. So what are we going to look at first? Visually, there's not much difference between them. You have to say there is already a small difference in operation here. Here they use a small digital display, while on the Insta everything looks analog. But here we have this multi-wheel, which we have here. That's really nice and very comfortable for one-handed operation. Yeah, those are just little details. With DJI, we have this wheel here. You can also use it with your hand here. But as I said, the wheel on the Insta is a bit more comfortable. You can tell right away when you touch it, this one is made of plastic. The one from Insta here, metal. So you can notice a slight difference in quality. Once again, here. As I said, the plastic doesn't feel cheap or anything like that. No, but the one from Insta, that's made of metal, and many gimbals, regardless of DJI, in this case are simply made of plastic. So those are the first differences you notice pretty quickly. But where are the bigger differences? Where do they lie between the two models? That's where the focus shifts a bit more to the software, to what you can actually do with it. And in the end, Insta is very likely ahead in that regard. But how exactly? If you have been looking for the answers to these questions, you will find everything you need to know right here in this video. I have carefully prepared this presentation to ensure that all the details are explained clearly for you. By staying with me until the very end, you will gain a much deeper understanding of the topics we are discussing today, as we explore every important aspect together in this comprehensive guide. The two Pro models, the important specifications, here we have Apple Dock. Kit native tracking, we have AI tracking up to 10 meters with gesture recognition. We have MagSafe here, it's compatible the whole thing. We have advanced multi-person tracking capabilities. We have incredibly stable active zoom tracking for precision. And we also have the specialized hoop mode for basketball. And we have Apple ProRes on iPhone here that's included as well. As I said, the competition doesn't offer all of that. I won't be able to cover everything here, but nonetheless, I'm going to focus on a few things that are pretty much only available with the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro. The very first thing I really liked here is actually this so-called dual view mode, this creative mode that we have here. That's pretty cool because I can just go outside. The advantage is I can see myself on the regular camera, that is on the front camera. And I can also use the second perspective here from the main camera facing backwards, and it looked like this.
I'm out here in the field right now, heading towards the pond, where I'll be taking several shots today. And I'm walking here with my dog, who's playing around quite a bit right now. But on the other hand, I also want to show you the microphone again, which I have attached here, also from Insta360. And of course, you can understand me much better this way than if I were just speaking into the phone here. So let's head over there now. Above all, we want to listen to the audio recording, and I also want to show you the dual view mode again. Here, we simply have the option to adjust the window accordingly. And you can basically move the window here, move it to wherever you need it. There's also the option to rotate the selection here. Yes, then I'm large and you can see me bigger, while where we're walking now is shown in a smaller window. You can switch the windows here. That's of course not a problem either. And there's also the option to split the screen here. So now we basically have a split screen here. Then you see me half and half. By the way, you can also swap that. You can move it up or down, and of course you can record like that as well. And yes, as I said, the microphone is on here for testing. And at the same time, as mentioned, we also have the gimbal, and we're really walking here on totally muddy ground. Nevertheless, the gimbal is still working here. And you can really see nicely how it balances everything out here. So let's continue now. And I hope I was able to give you a little insight here from the dual view mode. Now we'll continue right away in the studio.
I hope I was able to give you a little insight into our so-called dual view mode. It's really cool. I really like that you can actually pull it off. You can personalize and adjust it completely, and that makes you extremely flexible. You saw it, I recorded it here in 9:16 format because it's also perfect for Insta, TikTok and the like. That's why it's in this format too. Yeah, I'm already looking over there, so at the microphone. And as I said, here's the receiver in the end. So super easy. The whole thing is also stored in a nice box. It's definitely worth a recommendation as an accessory because the difference in sound, I'll show you that now.
And at the same time, as I said, you can also make a nice vlog here. You can have a great conversation here. There's also the microphone from Insta, not the camera, the microphone. And then the recording would be even better.
So this is how it would sound on the phone, and it's really a disaster. You just can't record a vlog like that. So a microphone is almost a must. If we're being completely honest, if you just set it to record without sound, then of course it's not relevant. But you can already tell there's a huge difference. And as I said, if someone is already speaking into the camera, then definitely use a microphone. Yes, that's definitely the tool view mode. And now I'd like to briefly introduce the time-lapse feature to you. The time-lapse is just as you know it, and there are various settings you can adjust. You can specify how long you want to record, and you can specify the interval for the recording, at what speed it records, so for example 20 seconds per second or 30 seconds per second and so on and so forth. You can adjust that in the settings, and then you'll have your time-lapse just the way you know it. You can also have the entire gimbal rotate at an angle during this as well. You can set all of that however you like. You'll have that with the infection certificate. A beautiful time-lapse in motion. So time-lapse is also super interesting. I think it's also a mode. What's also really interesting, of course, is the 360 degrees recording here. You can see very clearly here how the so-called pano photo works. So the whole thing is recorded in 360 degrees. It moves and then it starts step by step. And at the end, it creates this so-called 360 degree image. What I also used for this, which you can see very nicely, is the tripod from Insta360. It's pretty cool. It looks like this and you can extend it. And if you click here, it opens up right away. And then the whole thing stands on its own. So it's super convenient. I used it, and of course it was ideal for the recording. I could have also placed it on the ground because we also have the option to adjust everything here, as you know. But I liked using the tripod so much that I just went ahead and used it directly. The result of the photo is definitely something to show off. Depending on where you do it, it can of course be a bit more creative than maybe out here in the open. Nevertheless, I think you can see very nicely here how the result can turn out. Of course, it's even cooler on the smartphone because you can rotate it back and forth. In the image shown here, I obviously have to reflect the maximum amount of light. But it looks a bit different on the phone. But that's already pretty good. It's done really cool, and you can do it anywhere. You end up with this 360 degree panorama image. And that's what I've created here. It really looks fascinating. And depending on the environment you're in, the cooler the whole thing is. Yes, what we also have here is the so-called cinematic widescreen or wide format. I've used that here as well. For this, I walked around here with the gimbal. You can basically extend it a bit depending, you can. Yeah, here you have something like an extension. And then you can bend it downward. And then it really looks cinematic, basically. You can use the whole thing like that, which is what I did here. I walked around and I think it already looks pretty cool. Here, I also tried to add a bit of a movie effect with quick movements just to see how it all comes across. And because I was moving quickly here, the gimbal really shows its strengths. You can really see how stable everything stays here, even during these fast movements. It always remains steady. And in the end, I think it just looks really cool. I kept it pretty low to the ground. And like I said, I did my best to showcase everything, and it really turned out super cool. And what's also just awesome is that you can really let your creativity run wild with it. We have over 140 built-in cinematic filters here. So you can try out and adjust everything from black and white to, I don't know, all sorts of possibilities. In the end, you might end up with warm colors, vibrant colors, black and white, sapphire, and so on and so forth. You can easily personalize it all again here. The whole thing, the image. I left it original here. I really liked it that way. Also just now because the evening sun simply provided the perfect light. You can edit creatively, as I said, with over 140 cinematic filters. Yes, we also have a few other things here that I'll show you again. Now let's go through the modes here first. Here we have the option for a teleprompter. I've got the smartphone here, and I'd say let's just take a quick look under the camera, then I can demonstrate it a bit better for you. So I'll just mirror it directly here. That way you might see it a bit better than under the camera itself. For example, I really like it right now. So we've got the app open here. This is what it looks like. You can already see all the setting options down here, which I've already gone through with you. We'll also get to a few more things in a moment. And here on the right, we have the teleprompter. It just looks like this. It projects everything directly onto the smartphone for me. And then when I'm in this recording here, the one I showed you earlier, in that zero view mode, for example. So I've got a text here that I can narrate really well, especially for those who are on Insta, who make these shorts too. For them, it's of course ideal to see the text here during the recording. You can really use this very, very creatively. The app itself is great, super simple in its design. It's self-explanatory. I left everything on auto here, and I thought that was great. We also have an AI here up in the top right, which supports us because we might want to make a few more settings. There's a map here. Certain tools that you can start, for example, there's always a bit of explanation about what you can set up here. You could also increase the resolution a bit more here. 4K is of course also possible. It also depends on what your smartphone is capable of. That's part of it too. I've left it at 1080p for now, and especially here in these different modes, there are a few more settings you can adjust. Yes, definitely. And what I also really like, we have gesture recognition here. I'd like to talk about that as well. And the thing is, with gesture control, I'll have to show you this directly. You can activate it. And here again, there's a difference between the two models in particular. Specifically, with these two models, I have a range of up to 10 meters in which it recognizes my gestures here. That's actually quite interesting. I'd like to demonstrate that to you as well. So what we have here is I tried out different distances, pretty close, about 2 to 3 meters, then 5 meters, and then 10 meters. And then I had my wife raise her hand here for the recording. And here, during the recording, you can clearly see that the camera responds to it and then automatically starts recording. That's how gesture control is supposed to work. At the same time, AI tracking also starts. In this case, it follows you as well. That's necessary too, because you start the recording from a distance and you also want to be filmed. So this works up to 10 meters, the gesture control. Yeah, so AI tracking up to 10 meters with gesture recognition is really awesome. And the cool thing here, and I want to show this again because it's really important, it's simple. If you are behind an object, it searches for you. We have something like a finder here. The AI tracking searches for you. You eventually come back out of the thick bush in this specific case, and the tracking process continues right here. That is certainly not a standard procedure everywhere else either. That's why I want to reflect this here for you, especially in comparison to DJI. Because here's how it is. On the one hand, we have gesture recognition up to 10 meters here. Unfortunately, DJI falls short here. It can't do that. So 5 meters is the maximum still possible, but anything over 5 meters is hardly possible here. So anything over 5 meters is barely possible. Even 5 meters was already really pushing it. The AI tracking from DJI works wonderfully up to 5 meters. I have to say that as well. And here too, I had the situation where I was behind the bush, or my wife was behind the bush, and then came out of the bush area again. But unfortunately, this search window, this tracking also ends here. So that means, in other words, we've lost the person from tracking. They come back, but you don't zoom in on them or refocus on them again. Unfortunately, that's a shame with DJI. It didn't work. I have to say, I tried it a few times and it didn't work even once in my tests. But with the Insta360, with the Flow 2 Pro, it worked smoothly and more than once. I didn't have any difficulties at all. Just needed a few takes to make it look good. That's great, because that's something that's really important, especially when I'm out alone and using this as my gimbal, serving as my assistant or cameraman. I use gesture control. Everything starts up, and maybe something briefly gets in the way and the tracking stops. That's really unfortunate. So here, the clear advantage goes to the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro. I was really impressed by how well this very intelligent tracking works. The tracking also works for multiple people. And that's really cool because if I have more people, it tracks all of them, so they all fit into the frame. So really some very cool features here. Yes, on the back here we have what's called a mirror. That's something I miss here, for example. With DJI, unfortunately, I don't have a mirror on the back here. Now, looking here at this device from Insta360, and I actually almost said DJI by mistake, I have this very handy small mirror located right on the back. The whole thing is incredibly well thought out for the user because it allows you to simply see and confirm, okay, I am definitely in focus right now, or I can see that I am not. Also very cool because I'm holding it in my hand, so you don't need tracking, and it really worked great there. I really like the mirror that's been added there. Yes, and maybe another advantage, at least one, is the quick readiness here. I tried to demonstrate that. It's actually harder than you think, but when you attach everything here and flip it open, the so-called Insta360 Flow 2 Pro is ready to use within 2 seconds. So especially when things need to go quickly and you have the whole thing in your pocket, you just click it on, open it up, and with Android you can set it so that everything unlocks automatically and is immediately ready to film. It works super fast. With DJI it takes a little longer. So it's clearly over 2 seconds because after starting up, the DJI first has to align itself, and that alignment process, that takes about as long as the entire Insta needs to unfold and align itself. So that's just a small difference here. Especially if you need something quickly at hand and want to open it up fast, the Insta is noticeably faster than the DJI. We're not talking about a matter of seconds here, no. Nevertheless, there's just a clear difference between the two here. Yes, the gimbal is here. So as I said, down below, you'll find everything about it again in the description. You can check it out there. But before we wrap things up here, I just want to quickly show you the Insta, or rather this gimbal under the camera, because I think maybe that didn't really come across in the short videos. So I'll try to show it to you a bit more clearly. Above all, many of you already know it. Here we have the gimbal, which you can extend here, yes. You can see it just looks good. Looks cool. Here we have, like I mentioned before, this is our zoom wheel here, and here is the joystick basically. I'll try to show it like this. With this, we can move the whole thing here. Yes, we can start recording here. We can also use these basic functions here to switch from the front camera to the main camera. So we can rotate here by 180 degrees, and we can do it with a single click. We can also switch between 16:9 and 9:16 formats. Yes, then we have different modes here that we can cycle through, which are then displayed on the smartphone. These are the ones I was talking about. These modes, whether you're shooting a video, a time-lapse, and so on and so forth, you can see that here. And then up here you also have the automatic mode. You can also realign everything back here, especially when you're holding it in your hand. And then everything is ready to use. Otherwise, here we have the clamp that you attach to the phone, and then you attach the whole thing here, and then you're good to go. Maybe just a quick note about mirroring. Here you can see the mirror again, a bit closer up. And something I probably should have mentioned earlier, we have a light here. If I quickly start the whole thing now, so if I hold down the button here, I can turn it on. There's also a light here, and I can keep holding it. Then it turns on. I can also cycle through different brightness levels here, but I can also switch between cool white and warm white here. And if I don't need it for recording, I can simply turn the whole thing off. Yeah, it's really that simple. I don't want to make it too complicated either, because the gimbal itself is really completely self-explanatory. And many of you already know it anyway. Above all, what I wanted to focus on and show you today is what the software can do, and in the end, that's actually very important. So I've packed everything in here. Of course, we can also do a time-lapse. I think I didn't show the time-lapse. You can create a time-lapse here. There are various settings available here. I can move everything here in the time-lapse, or I can just leave everything here stationary in the end. And then I can also specify how long it should record. I think you already know that from the previous model, that's nothing new. And time-lapse is really, depending on where you are, very cool. Especially when you set it up somewhere, because with time-lapse it stays nicely in place. That's where, once again, this tripod comes in handy, because it lets you shoot something like this from a completely different perspective. So I'll say it again, down below in the description, you'll find everything you need. Definitely check it out. It's a really well-made gimbal, and I think even nowadays, gimbals are absolutely top-notch in terms of price and performance. And I have to say, you can get it for a really fair price. So if anyone still has a Christmas wish open, now's definitely a good time to consider it. Well, that's it from my side. I hope I was able to give you a bit of an impression here. Be sure to tune in again for the next video. Otherwise, feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions, and drop a like, and a subscription would be awesome too. See you next time on AlHuTV.